The red dust of planet Drakner swirled around Sergeant Taemin Kim's boots as he stepped carefully through the rocky canyon. His rifle felt heavy in his hands, but not as heavy as the weight in his chest. 3 months of fighting on this alien world had taught him that every shadow could hide death. "Contact ahead," whispered Private So-Young Lee through the comm system. She was their medic, barely 22 years old, but her eyes had already seen too much war. "Looks like Drakari remains." Taemin raised his hand, signaling the squad to stop. Behind him, communications specialist Hae-Won Chun checked her scanner while adjusting her pack. The woman never complained, even when they marched for 12 hours straight through the burning desert. Command said this area was cleared 2 weeks ago, Chun reported, her voice tight with concern. "There shouldn't be anything here." Taemin moved forward, his boots crunching on the strange purple stones that covered this part of Drakner. The Crimson Canyons had been named for their blood-red walls, but today they seemed darker somehow. More threatening dot as they rounded a bend in the canyon, Taemin stopped breathing. Ahead of them lay what had once been a Drakari nesting ground. The circular stone structures were broken and burned. Pieces of eggshells, each one the size of a dinner plate, were scattered across the ground like broken dreams. "Jesus," So-Young whispered, lowering her weapon. "They really did it. They killed them all." Taemin had seen death before. Human death, alien death, it all looked the same after a while. But this felt different, this felt wrong. The Drakari weren't soldiers, they were families, parents, children. "Standard sweep," he ordered, but his voice came out rougher than intended. "Check for any survivors or threats." The squad spread out among the ruins. Taemin walked slowly between the destroyed nests, trying not to look too closely at the remains. The official reports called the Drakari hostile aliens and enemy combatants, but the broken toys scattered among the shells told a different story. Chun's scanner beeped urgently. "Sergeant, I'm getting a life sign. Faint, but definitely alive." Taemin's heart jumped. "Where?" "Northeast corner, behind that large nest structure." They moved as a unit, weapons ready but hopes low. After 2 weeks, any survivor would be weak, possibly dying. Taemin prepared himself for another mercy killing, another report to file, another night without sleep. But what they found behind the broken nest wasn't what any of them expected. A dragon hatchling, no bigger than a house cat, lay curled in a small hollow between 2 rocks. Its scales were the color of midnight, with tiny flecks of silver that caught the alien sunlight. One wing was tucked under its body, the other spread slightly as if reaching for something that wasn't there. "Is it dead?" So-Young asked, her medical instincts taking over. The hatchling's chest rose and fell in tiny, rapid movements. Its eyes were closed, but Taemin could see the small creature was breathing, alive, but barely. "Negative," Taemin replied. "It's alive." Chun checked her scanner again. "No others." "This one's alone." Taemin knelt down slowly, his rifle still in his hands. The hatchling was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. Its scales shimmered like oil on water, and its tiny claws were curled like a sleeping kitten's. This wasn't a monster. This wasn't an enemy. This was a baby. "What do we do, Sergeant?" So-Young asked. Tae-Min knew the answer. Standard protocol was clear. All Drakari life forms were to be terminated on sight. No exceptions, no questions. The official reason was that they were too dangerous to leave alive, but Taemin had read the classified reports. The real reason was that dead aliens couldn't tell anyone what really happened during first contact. "You know what we have to do?" he said quietly. The hatchling's eyes opened. They were golden, like liquid sunlight, and they looked directly at Taemin with an intelligence that made his breath catch. Not the blank stare of an animal, but the aware, frightened gaze of something that understood what was happening. The tiny creature made a sound, soft and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It wasn't a roar or a growl, it was something else. Something that sounded almost like, "It's trying to talk," So-Young whispered. Taemin's finger found the trigger of his rifle. 1 shot. Quick and clean, that's all it would take. 1 shot. And he could file his report, return to base, and pretend this never happened. The hatchling made the sound again, tilting its small head to one side. Its golden eyes never left Taemin's face. There was no aggression there, no threat. Just fear and something that looked remarkably like hope. "Sergeant," Chun said urgently, "I've got incoming transmission from command. Captain Park wants a status." "Report." Taemin's hands began to shake. The rifle felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He'd killed before. Enemy soldiers, creatures that attacked his squad, threats to human colonies, but this this was different. "Tell him we're conducting a thorough sweep," Taemin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No survivors found." "But Sergeant, that's—" "An order." The hatchling struggled to sit up, its tiny legs shaking with effort. It looked at each member of the squad in turn, then back at Taemin. The musical sound came again, but this time it was softer, sadder. Like a question that already knew the answer. Tae-Min raised his rifle. The hatchling didn't try to run. It just sat there, looking at him with those impossible golden eyes, waiting. "I can't," Taemin said suddenly, lowering his weapon. "I can't do it. Sergeant?" So Young stepped forward. "What are you saying?" "Look at it," Taemin said, his voice breaking. "It's just a baby. It's scared and alone, and it's just a baby." The hatchling made another sound, this one different from the others, softer, almost like a purr. "Orders are orders," Chun said, but her voice was uncertain. "We have to—" "Follow protocol? Protocol?" Taemin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Protocol says we're fighting monsters. Does that look like a monster to you?" The three soldiers stood in silence, staring at the tiny creature that had somehow stopped their war in its tracks. In the distance, the wind howled through the canyon. Walls, carrying with it the scent of dust and death and something else, something that might have been hope. "What do we do now?" So Young asked. Tae-Min looked at the hatchling one more time. Its golden eyes seemed to sparkle with something that might have been gratitude, or maybe he was just imagining it. "Now," he said, making a decision that would change everything, "we figure out how to keep it alive." The hatchling chirped once, softly, and Taemin felt something shift in his chest. Something that told him his war was over, but his real fight was just beginning. The military base on Drakner hummed with activity even in the early morning hours. Taemin sat in the holding cell, staring at the metal walls that had been his home for 3 days. His uniform was wrinkled and his face unshaven, but his eyes were clear. He had made his choice, and he would live with it. The hatchling was gone, taken away the moment they returned to base. Captain Woojin Park had been waiting for them, his face red with anger and his voice loud enough to wake the dead. "You disobeyed?" "Direct orders," Park had screamed. "You compromised the mission. You put your squad in danger." But Taemin had seen the truth in his captain's eyes. Park wasn't angry about the mission or the danger. He was angry because Taemin had brought back proof that the war was built on lies. The cell door opened with a sharp metal clang. Sergeant Major Byung-ho stepped inside, his gray hair cut short and his uniform pressed to perfection. The old soldier had fought in 3 wars before Drakner, and his face showed every battle. "Kim," Byung-ho said, sitting down across from Taemin, "do you know what you've done?" "I saved a life," Taemin replied simply. "You saved a monster. Did you see it?" Taemin asked. "Did you actually look at what I brought back?" Byung-ho's jaw tightened. "I saw the reports. I saw the files. I saw enough. But did you see the creature itself?" The sergeant major stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, the red sun of Drakner was rising over the military compound. "It doesn't matter what I saw. It matters what you did. You broke military law. You endangered human lives. You committed treason." "Treason?" Taemin laughed bitterly. "Against who? Against what? Against a war that was started with lies? Careful, soldier. You're already in enough trouble." The door opened again, and a woman in a white lab coat entered. She was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and gentle hands. Her name tag read Dr. Miren, Sergeant Major, she said politely. "I need to speak with Sergeant Kim about the specimen." "The what?" Taemin stood up quickly. "You mean the hatchling?" Dr. Miren looked uncomfortable. "The creature you brought back. I need to ask you some questions about its behavior." "Where is it?" Taemin demanded. What have you done with it? It's safe, Dr. Miran said, but her voice was uncertain. It's being held in the research facility for study. Study? Taemin felt ice in his veins. What kind of study? Byung-ho stepped forward. That's classified information, soldier. You don't have clearance. But Dr. Miran was looking at Taemin with something that might have been sympathy. I can tell you that the creature is healthy. It's been eating the food we provide, and it seems to be growing quickly. Growing how quickly? It's almost doubled in size in 3 days, Dr. Miran said. And it's showing signs of advanced intelligence. Problem-solving abilities far beyond what we expected. Expected? Taemin's heart began to race. What did you expect? Dr. Miran glanced at Byung-ho, then back at Taemin. The official report said the Drakari were primitive. Simple creatures driven by instinct and aggression. But this hatchling, it's different. Different how? It responds to its name. Taemin blinked. Its name? It started making sounds whenever anyone said spark. We think that's what you called it in the field. Taemin's throat felt tight. He had whispered the name. Once, quietly, when he thought no one was listening. Just once, when the tiny creature had looked at him with those golden eyes. It also recognizes faces, Dr. Miran continued. It becomes agitated when strangers approach, but it calms down when it sees people it knows. And it's been making drawings. Drawings? In the sand of its enclosure. Simple shapes at first, but they're getting more complex. Circles, lines, patterns. It's trying to communicate. Byung-ho's face darkened. Enough. This conversation is over. Wait, Taemin said desperately. Doctor, please, you have to understand. This isn't just some animal. It's intelligent. It's scared. It's just a baby who lost its family. Dr. Miran's eyes filled with tears. I know, she whispered. I know exactly what it is. Then why are you helping them? Because I don't have a choice. And neither do you. Byung-ho grabbed Dr. Miran's arm. That's enough. You're out of line, Doctor. But Dr. Miran shook him off. The creature is scheduled for transfer tomorrow morning. It's going to the main research facility on Luna Base. Once it's there, ... She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Once it's there, what? Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. They'll take it apart, Dr. Miran said quietly, piece by piece, to learn how it works. To find its weaknesses. To develop better weapons. The room fell silent. Outside, Taemin could hear the sounds of the base waking up. Soldiers talking, vehicles starting, the normal sounds of military life. But inside the cell, everything had stopped. There's something else? Dr. Miran said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been reading the classified files, the real ones. Not the reports they give to regular soldiers. What files? The first contact reports, the real reason we came to Drakner. But Byung-ho stepped forward threateningly. Doctor, you're walking into dangerous territory. The Drakari didn't attack us, Dr. Miran continued, ignoring him. They tried to communicate. They sent diplomatic envoys. They offered us gifts, knowledge, friendship. That's enough. Byung-ho shouted. We shot their ambassadors out of the sky, Dr. Miran said, tears streaming down her face. We killed them before they could even deliver their message. And then we told everyone they were the aggressors. Taemin felt the world spinning around. Him. Why? Why would we do that? Because Drakner has the largest deposits of quantum crystals in the galaxy, Dr. Miran said. And certain corporations needed those crystals. A war was cheaper than negotiation. Get out, Byung-ho said coldly. Both of you get out now. Dr. Miran wiped her eyes and walked toward the door. But as she passed Taemin, she stopped. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for what we've done. To you, to your squad, to that innocent creature. I'm sorry, we're all too cowardly to stop it. She left, and Byung-ho followed her. The door slammed shut, leaving Taemin alone with his thoughts and his guilt. But as the hours passed, his guilt transformed into something else. Something harder and more dangerous. Determination. That night, as the base settled into its routine. Taemin made his second choice. If the system wouldn't save an innocent life, then he would have to work outside the system. The emergency alarm began blaring at 0300 hours. By the time the guards reached the research facility, both Taemin and the hatchling were gone, and somewhere in the darkness of Draknar's wilderness, a human soldier carried a dragon baby toward an uncertain future, knowing that he had just declared war on his own species. But as the tiny creature nestled against his chest, making soft musical sounds of contentment, Taemin knew he had made the right choice, even if it killed him. The heat of Draknar's desert was merciless during the day, but at night the temperature dropped so fast that Taemin's breath formed clouds in the air. He held Spark close to his chest, sharing what little warmth he had. The hatchling had grown, larger in just the few days since their escape, now the size of a small dog, but it still shivered in the cold. "It's okay," Taemin whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to Spark or himself. "We'll find somewhere safe." They had been walking for 3 days through the rocky wasteland, staying off the main paths to avoid the search parties. Taemin knew Colonel Jinwoo would have every available soldier looking for them. The man was known for his ruthless efficiency and his hatred of anything that threatened human supremacy. Spark made a soft chirping sound and pointed one small claw toward a cluster of rocks ahead. The little dragon had been doing this for hours, leading them toward water sources and safe places to rest. Its intelligence was growing as fast as its body. "You want to go there?" Taemin asked. Spark nodded, an action that still amazed Taemin. The creature was learning human gestures, human words, even human emotions. When Taemin was sad, Spark would nuzzle against his hand. When he was afraid, the little dragon would stand protectively in front of him despite being no bigger than a house cat. They reached the rocks and found exactly what Spark had promised. A small cave, hidden from view, with an underground spring providing fresh water. Taemin filled his canteen and let Spark drink its fill. "How did you know this was here?" Taemin asked. Spark tilted its head and made a series of complex sounds. Not the simple chirps and purrs from before, but something that sounded almost like language, like it was trying to explain something important. "I wish I could understand you," Taemin said sadly. Spark seemed to think about this. Then it walked over to a patch of soft sand and began to draw with its claw. Simple shapes at first, circles and lines, but then something more complex. A map. Tae-min knelt down and looked closer. The drawing showed the cave they were in, the rocks outside, and a path leading deeper into the desert. But at the end of the path, Spark had drawn something that made Taemin's heart race. Other dragons, larger ones, adults. "Your family?" Taemin asked. "Are you taking me to your family?" Spark looked up at him with those golden eyes and nodded slowly. Then it made another sound, this one lower and more serious. "A warning. They won't like me," Taemin said, understanding. "They'll think I'm the enemy?" Spark chirped and pointed at itself, then at Taemin. It drew a circle around both of them in the sand, together. "You'll protect me?" Taemin asked, touched by the gesture, but before Spark could answer, the sound of engines filled the air. Search aircraft flying low over the desert. Taemin grabbed Spark and pressed deeper into the cave, holding his breath as the lights swept past their hiding place. When the sounds faded, Taemin emerged to find something that made his blood run cold. Footprints in the sand outside the cave. Large ones, with claws, arranged in a circle around their hiding place. They were being watched. Tae-min reached for his rifle, but Spark put a gentle claw on his arm and shook its head. The little dragon walked out of the cave, looking around calmly, and made a series of musical sounds. The response came from the rocks above. A deep, resonant call that seemed to shake the very air. Then another, and another, until the entire canyon echoed with dragon voices. They emerged from the shadows like living nightmares. 3 adult Drakari, each one the size of a small building, with scales that gleamed like armor and eyes that burned with intelligence. Their wings were folded against their backs, but Taemin could see the power in their massive forms. The largest dragon, its scales a deep blue-black color, stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like thunder rolling across the desert. "Human, It said in perfect accented English. You carry one of our young. Taemin's hands shook as he slowly put down his rifle. I'm protecting it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. From your own kind? The dragon observed. Why? Because it's innocent, Taemin said, finding his courage. Because it's just a baby. Because killing children is wrong, no matter what species they are. The dragon studied him for a long moment. Then it did something unexpected. It smiled, showing teeth the size of daggers. I am Elder Krathik, it said. I have lived for 600 years, and I have never heard a human speak such words. Most humans aren't like me, Taemin admitted. No, Elder Krathik agreed. Most humans are like the ones who destroyed our nesting grounds, who killed our children, who started this war with lies and greed. Taemin felt shame wash over him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what my people have done. Elder Krathik's massive head tilted to one side. You feel guilt for crimes you did not commit. This is also unusual for a human. Spark chirped loudly and ran to Elder Krathik, nuzzling against the great dragon's leg. The elder's expression softened as it looked down at the hatchling. This little one has bonded with you, Elder Krathik said. Do you know what this means? No, Taemin said honestly. It means you have been chosen, not by us, but by the child itself. Drakari do not bond lightly, human. When we give our trust, it is forever. Spark ran back to Taemin and climbed up onto his shoulder, purring softly. The little dragon had grown enough that its weight was noticeable, but Taemin didn't mind. There is something else, Elder Krathik said, his voice growing serious. Something you must know about the child you protect. The elder dragon moved closer, and Taemin had to fight every instinct that told him to run. Elder Krathik's head was now level with his own, and he could feel the warmth of the dragon's breath. Look at the patterns on its scales, Elder Krathik said softly. The silver markings on its neck and wings. Taemin looked at Spark, really. Looked for the first time. The silver markings formed intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow in the light. They were beautiful, but also somehow familiar. I've seen these before, Taemin said suddenly. In the ruins, carved into the stone. Yes, Elder Krathik said, they are the marks of the bridge builder. The one who was prophesied to bring peace between the species. Prophesied? Our legends speak of a dragon who would bond with another species, who would unite the children of different worlds against a common threat. We thought the prophecy was just a story. Elder Krathik's golden eyes gleamed. But now you are here, and the child has chosen you. I don't understand, Taemin said. Common threat? What common threat? Elder Krathik's expression grew dark. Something comes, human. Something that will devour all life in this galaxy if we do not stand together. Your people started this war at the worst possible time. What's coming, Death? Elder Krathik said simply. Death from the void between stars, and only united can we hope to survive it. Spark chirped and touched Taemin's cheek with its claw. The little dragon's eyes were serious now, older somehow, as if it understood the weight of what Elder Krathik had said. Will you help us? Taemin asked. Will you teach me what I need to know? Elder Krathik smiled again. You have already begun to learn, Bridgewalker. The child will teach you the rest. In the distance, the sound of engines grew louder. The search was getting closer. Come, Elder Krathik said. It is time to go deeper into the desert. Time to learn what you must learn before the enemy finds us. As they walked into the vast wasteland, Taemin felt Spark's warmth against his shoulder and Elder Krathik's presence beside him. For the first time since leaving the base, he felt hope that they were no longer alone. The underground chamber was vast, carved from living rock by dragon claws over thousands of years. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing with a soft blue light that made Taemin's skin tingle. Spark had grown again, now the size of a large dog, and its scales had developed new patterns that matched the carvings around them. Elder Krathik stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a dozen other adult dragons. Their eyes were closed and they hummed in perfect harmony, creating a sound that seemed to vibrate through Taemin's bones. What are they doing? Taemin whispered. Preparing, Elder Krothic said, opening his massive golden eyes. For you to see the truth. The truth about what? About your species. About mine, about the enemy that comes for us all. Elder Krothic gestured with one claw, and the symbols on the walls began to move. They flowed like water, forming images that told a story older than human civilization. Long ago, Elder Krothic began, the galaxy was full of life, hundreds of species all living in harmony. We Drakari were the teachers, the peacekeepers, the bridge builders between worlds. The images showed dragons flying between planets, carrying messages and gifts. They showed cities where different species lived together, worked together, built amazing things together. What happened? Tayman asked, though he was afraid of the answer. The void swarm, Elder Krothic said, and the images changed. Now they showed darkness spreading across the galaxy. Planets going silent, stars dying. They came from beyond our galaxy, consuming everything in their path. We fought them, all of us together, but they were too many. The images showed the final battle. Dragons and other species fighting side by side against creatures of pure darkness. But the light was losing. We failed, Elder Krothic said sadly. The galaxy fell, most species died. We survivors went into hiding, waiting for the swarm to pass. But they're gone now, right? Tayman asked, This happened long ago. No, Elder Krothic said, and his voice was full of sorrow. They are not gone, they are coming back. Our deep space watchers have seen the signs. The void swarm returns, and this time they know where to find us. Spark chirped and climbed onto Tayman's shoulder. The little dragon was trembling, not from cold, but from fear. How long do we have? Tayman asked. Perhaps a year, maybe less. Then why are we fighting each other? Tayman demanded. Why aren't we preparing together? Elder Krothic's expression grew angry. Because your leaders want our worlds for themselves. Because they think they can win this war quickly and then face the swarm alone. Can they? No single species can survive what is coming. Only together, united, do we have any hope. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the other dragons. Tayman felt the weight of knowledge settling on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. The child you protect, Elder Krothic continued, is our hope. The bridge builder can form connections between species that go beyond words, beyond fear. Through the child, we can share knowledge, strength, even life itself. I don't understand. Touch the child, Elder Krothic said. Open your mind, let the bond form fully. Tayman reached up and gently touched Spark's head. The little dragon purred and leaned into his hand. Suddenly, the world exploded with color and sensation. He could feel Spark's thoughts, its emotions, its memories, the terror of being alone after the attack, the joy of finding someone who cared, the growing understanding of its own destiny. But more than that, he could feel the other dragons in the chamber, their ancient wisdom, their deep sadness, their desperate hope. He could feel the planet itself, the plants and animals, the very stones beneath his feet. This is what the bridge builder can do, Elder Krothic's voice echoed in his mind. This is how we can truly unite. Not through words or treaties, but through shared experience. The connection faded, leaving Tayman gasping. Spark nuzzled his cheek, concerned. The humans won't believe this, Tayman said. They'll think it's a trick. Some will, Elder Krothic agreed, but not all. There are those among your people who seek truth, who want peace, they will listen. And if they don't, Elder Krothic's eyes glowed brighter. Then we will all die when the swarm returns. Human, dragon, every living thing in this galaxy will be consumed. Before Tayman could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. The other dragons lifted their heads, their eyes wide with alarm. What's happening? Tayman asked. They have found us, Elder Krothic said grimly. Your Colonel Jinwu has tracked us to this place. The sound of explosions echoed through the tunnels. Dust fell from the ceiling and the glowing symbols on the walls flickered. We have to run, Tayman said. No, Elder Krothic said firmly. We fight. It is time to show your people what they are truly up against. The adult dragons began to move, their massive forms flowing through the chamber like liquid shadow. Spark jumped down from Taemin's shoulder and began to grow. Its body stretched and expanded, scales hardening into armor, wings spreading wide. What's happening to it? Taemin asked in amazement. The child is coming into its power, Elder Krathic said. Fear and need are accelerating its growth. Soon, it will be large enough to fly. More explosions shook the chamber. Human soldiers would be pouring into the tunnels now, their weapons ready, their hearts full of hatred and fear. I have to stop this, Taemin said. I have to make them understand. You cannot reason with those who refuse to listen, Elder Krathic said, but you can protect what matters most. The elder dragon handed Taemin a small device that pulsed with the same blue light as the wall symbols. A communicator, Elder Krathic explained. Quantum encrypted. It will allow you to contact any human ship or base in the system. When the time comes, you will know what to say. When what time comes? When the swarm arrives? When your people realize that their real enemy was never us. The chamber door exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, their weapons firing streams of energy that lit up the darkness. The dragons roared in response, their voices shaking the very mountains. The battle had begun. Taemin grabbed Spark, who was now the size of a horse, and climbed onto its back. The young dragon's wings beat powerfully, lifting them into the air. Remember, Elder Krathic called out as he breathed fire at the advancing soldiers. The child is the key, protected above all else. As they flew through the smoke and chaos, Taemin looked down at the battle below. Humans and dragons fighting and dying while somewhere in the void between stars, an ancient enemy prepared to devour them all. He held tight to Spark's neck and whispered, "We have to find another way." The young dragon roared in agreement, its voice now deep and strong. Together they flew toward an uncertain future, carrying with them the only hope for peace in a galaxy at war. Behind them, the mountain burned and the sound of battle echoed across the desert like thunder. The human military base was in chaos. Soldiers ran between buildings, shouting orders and carrying wounded comrades. The attack on the dragon stronghold had been a disaster. Half the assault force was dead or missing, and the survivors brought backstories that no one wanted to believe. Admiral Sun-hee Nam stood in the command center, watching the reports come in. She was a career soldier, tough and practical, but the images on the screens made her stomach turn. Dragons fighting alongside humans, a young soldier riding a dragon into battle. A war that had somehow become something else entirely. Ma'am, her aide said quietly, "We have a problem. Another one?" Admiral Nam asked tiredly. Dr. Dayun from the Deep Space Monitoring Station is requesting immediate access to you. She says it's about the dragon predictions. Admiral Nam frowned. Dragon? Predictions? The creatures claimed something was coming from outside the galaxy. Dr. Dayun has been monitoring deep space for any signs of, anything unusual. And she found something. Dr. Dayun was a small, nervous woman who spent most of her time staring at computer screens and drinking too much coffee. When she entered the command center, her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "Admiral," she said without preamble, "we need to evacuate the system. Now, excuse me? The dragons were right. There's something coming, something big." Dr. Dayun activated the main display, showing a map of local space. 3 days ago, our deep space sensors detected massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Distortions? Ships, Admiral, hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They're still too far away to get clear readings, but the energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. Admiral Nam studied the display. Are you telling me the dragons predicted an alien invasion? I'm telling you that everything they said about the void swarm appears to be true. And if their other predictions are accurate, these things don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume everything in their path. The command center fell silent. Outside, the sounds of the wounded and dying continued, but inside, everyone was focused on the impossible truth displayed on the screens. "How long do we have?" Admiral Nam asked. At their current speed, maybe 18 hours before they reach the outer planets. Another 6 hours after that before they get here? Can we fight them? Dr. Dayun looked at her with something like pity. Admiral, according to the dragon records, the last time these things appeared, they consumed half the galaxy. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years just vanished. Then we evacuate. All civilian personnel, all non-essential. Ma'am, the aide interrupted. We're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the desert. Colonel Jinwoo? No, ma'am. It's Sergeant Kim, and he's not alone. The main screen changed to show a young man sitting on the back of a dragon. The creature was magnificent, its scales shimmering with silver patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. But it was the man's eyes that caught Admiral Num's attention. They were filled with desperate hope. Admiral Num, Taemin said. My name is Sergeant Taemin Kim. I know you've been told I'm a traitor, but I'm not your enemy. Neither are the dragons. Sergeant Kim, Admiral Num said carefully, you're in violation of multiple military codes. Surrender yourself and the creature, and we can discuss terms. There are no terms, Taemin said. Not anymore. The Void Swarm is coming, you know, it's true. Dr. Din's readings confirm everything the dragons told us. Admiral Nam glanced at Dr. Dayun, who nodded grimly. Even if that's true, Admiral Nam said, what do you expect us to do? We're in the middle of a war. End it, Taemin said simply. End the war. Unite with the dragons. Fight the real enemy together. That's impossible. The dragons are the only reason any of us might survive, Taemin interrupted. They fought the swarm before. They know their weaknesses. They know how to kill them. Spark, the dragon Taemin rode, lifted its head and spoke. Its voice was young but clear, and it spoke perfect English. Admiral Nam, Spark said, I am called Spark. I am the bridge builder. I offer you a choice. The command center erupted in surprised voices. A talking dragon was one thing, but a talking dragon offering negotiations was something else entirely. What kind of choice? Admiral Nam asked, her voice barely steady. Join us willingly, and we will share our knowledge. We will teach you to fight the swarm. We will stand together as allies. And if we refuse, then you will face the swarm alone, and you will all die? Admiral Nam looked around the command center at her officers. Some looked skeptical, others frightened. But all of them were looking at her for answers she didn't have. How do we know you're telling the truth? She asked. Spark's eyes began to glow. Because I will show you. The dragon's mind touched hers, and suddenly Admiral Nam was seeing through dragon eyes. She saw the ancient battle against the swarm, the desperate last stand, the billions of lives lost. She saw the creatures of the void, things of pure hunger and darkness that consumed entire worlds. When the vision ended, Admiral Nam was on her knees, tears streaming down her face. Dear God, she whispered, it's all true. Now you understand, Spark said gently. Now you know what we face. What do you need from us? Admiral Nam asked. Safe passage to the human fleet? The dragon elders wish to speak with your leaders. We must coordinate our defenses before the swarm arrives. That's impossible. The fleet commanders will never agree to meet with dragons. They will when the swarm scouts arrive in 6 hours, Taemin said grimly. They'll agree to anything if it means survival. As if summoned by his words, the alarms began blaring again. Dr. Dayun ran to her console, her face going white. Admiral, she said, the advanced scout ships just entered. The system, they're heading straight for the agricultural worlds. Can we intercept them? We can try, but according to the dragon records, scout ships are just probes. They're testing our defenses. The main fleet is still coming. Admiral Nam made a decision that went against everything she'd been trained to believe. Open a channel to all human ships in the system. Tell them we're forming an alliance with the dragons. Tell them anyone who refuses to cooperate will be considered an enemy of humanity. Ma'am, that's an order. And get me a secure line to Colonel Jinwoo. If he's still alive, I need to tell him the war is over. Taemin smiled for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Admiral. You won't regret this. I hope not, Sergeant. Because if this doesn't work, we're all dead anyway. Spark spread its wings and prepared to take flight. We go now to gather the dragons. When the swarm arrives, we will be ready. As they flew away from the base, Taman looked back at Admiral. Nam, the woman was already shouting orders, organizing the impossible alliance that might save them all. Do you think it will work? He asked Spark. I think, the young dragon said, that humans and dragons together can accomplish anything, even defeating the darkness between stars. In the distance, the first explosions lit up the sky as scout ships began their attack. But for the first time since the war began, Taman felt hope. The real battle was about to begin, but they would face it together. The combined human-dragon fleet hung in space above Drakner like a constellation of hope and desperation. Massive human battleships flew alongside ancient dragon carriers, their crews working together for the first time in either species' history. At the center of it all, a small shuttle carried the most important passengers in the galaxy. President Kyung-Soo Lim sat across from Elder Krathik, in the specially modified conference room. The human leader's face was pale but determined, while the ancient dragon's golden eyes held the wisdom of centuries. The peace accords are signed, President Lim said, his voice hoarse from hours of negotiation. All human colonies will recognize dragon sovereignty over their traditional territories. All dragon clans will provide military support against the swarm. It is a good beginning, Elder Krathik replied. But words on paper will not save us from what comes. Taemin stood near the viewport, watching the impossible sight of human and dragon ships preparing for battle together. Spark, now fully grown, and magnificent, perched beside him. The young dragon's scales had developed into intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with their own light. The first wave of swarm ships will arrive in 3 hours, Admiral Nam reported. Long-range sensors show at least 200 vessels, each one the size of a city. And the main fleet? President Lim asked. Still coming. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. They'll be here in 18 hours. Elder Krathik's expression grew grim. The Herald will come with the first wave. It is their champion, their voice. If we can defeat it, the main fleet might hesitate. And if we can't, then nothing will stop them from consuming this entire system. Spark lifted its head suddenly, its eyes wide with alarm. It's here, the dragon said. The Herald has arrived. The viewport filled with darkness. Not the natural darkness of space, but something deeper, more terrifying. It was as if a piece of the void itself had come alive, reaching out with tendrils of pure hunger. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Nam ordered. Execute Plan Unity. The combined fleet moved into formation. Human ships with their energy weapons and missile systems formed the outer ring, while dragon carriers released their living fighters into the void. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Spark, Taemin said. Are you ready? The young dragon nodded. I was born ready. The bridge builder exists to unite species in the face of extinction. This is my purpose. They boarded their fighter, a hybrid craft that combined human technology with dragon biology. Spark's body formed the living hull, while Taemin controlled the weapon systems. It was the ultimate expression of their bond, two species becoming one. As they launched into space, Taemin could feel the connection forming, not just between him and Spark, but between every human and dragon in the fleet. Through the bridge builder's power, they began to share thoughts, emotions, tactical information. Target the Herald's core, Elder Krathik's voice echoed in every mind. It feeds on fear and despair. Show it courage instead. The first wave of swarm ships emerged from the Herald's darkness. They were unlike anything in the galaxy, creatures of living shadow that defied all natural laws. They moved like liquid, striking like lightning, consuming everything they touched. Engage! Admiral Nam shouted. The battle began. Human missiles streaked through space, exploding against swarm vessels in brilliant flashes of light. Dragon fire, ancient and powerful, carved through the darkness like swords of flame. But for every swarm, Ship destroyed, 2 more seem to take its place. They're adapting to our weapons, Dr. Dayun reported from the command ship. Their hulls are becoming resistant to our energy weapons. Then we try something else, Taemin said. Through his bond with Spark, he could feel the Herald's attention focusing on them. The creature sensed what they were, what they represented. It's afraid of us, Spark said with wonder. The Herald is actually afraid. Why? Because we are proof that unity is possible. That species can overcome their differences. That the swarm's philosophy of consume or be consumed is wrong. They dove toward the Herald, weaving between its grasping tendrils. Other human-dragon pairs followed, their combined consciousness creating a network of shared courage and determination. Now! Taemin shouted. Every human-dragon team attacked at once, their weapons and fire focused on the Herald's core. The creature of darkness screamed, a sound that threatened to shatter minds across the fleet, but the scream was answered by another sound. Dragons roaring in defiance, humans cheering in determination. The voice of 2 species united in purpose. The Herald's core cracked. Light poured out, real light, warm and clean. The creature began to collapse in on itself, its darkness dissolving. Impossible. A voice whispered across space, the Herald's dying words. Unity is impossible. All species must consume or be consumed. You're wrong, Spark said, its voice carrying across the void. Unity is not just possible, it's inevitable. Life finds a way to survive, and that way is together. The Herald collapsed completely, taking half the swarm fleet with it. The remaining ships began to retreat, fleeing back into the darkness between stars. They're running, Admiral Nam said in amazement. The swarm is actually running. This battle is won, Elder Krothik said, but the war is not over. The main fleet will come, and it will be prepared for our unity. President Lim stood up, his face transformed by hope. Then we'll be ready for them, all of us together. 6 months later, Taemin stood in the new Unity Station, watching human and dragon children play together in the gardens. They laughed and chased each other, their joy infectious and pure. These children would grow up in a galaxy where their parents' war was just a story from history. Spark landed beside him, now leader of the Dragon Youth Corps, the Young Dragons, and human pilots trained together, their bonds growing stronger every day. The main swarm fleet is still out there, Spark said. They'll come back eventually. I know, Taemin replied. But when they do, we'll be ready, really ready this time. Because we're not just human anymore, we're not just dragon, we're something new. Taemin smiled and scratched behind Spark's ears, the same gesture he'd used when the dragon was just a tiny hatchling. We're family. In the distance, the combined fleet continued its patrols, human and dragon ships flying together through the cosmos. They were no longer 2 species at war, but one people preparing for the challenges ahead. The bridge builder had fulfilled its destiny. Unity was no longer impossible. It was inevitable, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Void Swarm waited and planned, not knowing that their greatest enemy was not weapons or ships or armies. It was hope. The hope that different species could become one. The hope that love was stronger than fear. The hope that in the vast dark universe, no one had to face the void alone. Tae-Min had refused to kill a dragon hatchling, and that choice had saved the galaxy. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion have the greatest consequences. The war was over. The real journey had just begun.